trying. Tell me, are you fighting? Fighting for your life.
Welcome to another edition of The Good Life. I'm so pumped and excited to be with you once more. It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. As you can see, it's wonderful. The wind is blowing. It's 75 degrees. The Lord is good. And we're excited to be with you once more. We've been dealing with average. We've been talking about how do we fight average? How do we get ahead in life? How do we make progress? Today is no different. I'm going to talk to you about a story in the Bible about a man named Gideon. Now, anybody who knows scripture knows about Gideon. It starts in the book of Judges, chapter number 6. It talks about a man who God called, who felt that he didn't have what it takes. And he felt that he did not have enough to do whatever God called him to do. Now, listen to me. This is not abnormal. This was written over 3,000 years ago. A man who thought that he was the lowest of the lowest in his family, who belonged to the lowest family. That means he felt he had no influence, no resources, no power. That means he was at the lowest of lowest levels. Now, I know I'm talking to a lot of people via YouTube, going across the world. At some point, I pray that it will reach those who have an ear to hear. But listen to me. You have to understand something. This is nothing new. Insecurity is nothing new. Finding it out and believing that you don't have what it takes and you don't have enough is nothing new. God took a man who believed that he had nothing, raised him up to have an army of 32,000, then took him back down to 300 and said, now go fight a people who have 135,000 people. How was this done? But again, he took him from a place of insecurity, a place of not having enough or believing he couldn't do it, to the point that he was a leader of the army of God that went in and delivered folks. So today we're going to talk about three things, 3 points today. 3 points that we need to act on in order to make progress in this area. Number one, and you got to hear me, you got to hear my heart, you got to hear what I'm saying, is if you hear nothing else, this is what's going to take you out of that position. This is what's going to move you from I don't have enough, I don't have what it takes, I can't do it mentality. The obstacles of life that come against it. We're going to deal with that. But first thing you got to understand, listen to me. First thing you got to do is you got to believe. I ain't talking about Disney. I'm not talking about wish upon a star, believe. I'm talking about taking what the promise is. I'm talking about taking your vision. I'm talking about taking what you want to do. I'm talking about seeing it, visualizing it. I want you to internalize the fact that, hey, if it's to write a book, if it's to be a good father, a good mother, a student, to get into that graduate school, that medical school, that law school, if it's to be a lawyer, it's to whatever it is you want to be in life, whatever vision you have, business owner, family man, it does not make a difference. I want you, first of all, to believe. That's the only way you're going to get out of this mentality of I don't have what it takes and I can't do it. Just like Gideon, you got to at some point, listen to me, you got to trust, you got to believe that your present circumstances, where you're at right now, your bank account, your family, your bedroom, your basement, I don't care where you at, is not a determining factor on where you're going. I want you to hear me. It has nothing to do, where you are has nothing to do with where you're going. You have to understand something. I'm going to say it again because I want you to get in your spirit. Where you are right now has nothing to do with where you're going. Do not allow your circumstances to dictate who you are. Gideon said, I'm the lowest man of the lowest family. How is it that I am a mighty man of valor? Remember, it's not based on where you are at right now. It is not based upon what you have right now. It is based upon what you believe. That determines where you go. What you believe determines where you go. So if I believe, that's the first step. It's taking me to the next step. The next step is to say it. It's to say it. The scripture says life and death is in the power of the tongue. Jesus said you're free by your words, you condemn by your words. That means freedom and being locked up, if you will, with my life comes from the words of my mouth. I first got to believe it, then I got to start saying it. I got to believe it enough to say it. I love the fight of champions. I love to study champions. And one thing I studying someone like Muhammad Ali, for instance, everyone has heard that name. It is worldwide. He was the greatest of all times. And you've asked Ali, he would say, I had to believe I was the greatest. And I started saying I was the greatest before I became the greatest. You don't become something and then talk about it. No, you got to start talking about it on your way to becoming. On your way to becoming, you have to talk about it. You have to get to a point where you believe it enough to start saying it out of your mouth so that you can start believing and internalizing the truth of who you are and what you can do. You can't allow, again, going back to point number one, that present circumstance to dictate your future. First, you got to believe, then you got to say, and here it is. Here's what hurts a great majority of folks, and they stop right here. You got to act. Last week we talked about it, planning. We can't move in a parked car. You got to act. At some point, you got to make some move toward that vision, that destination, that promise. You have to be able to understand that it's not going to happen just because you want it and just because you talk about it. It's going to happen when you start making progress and act on what you say you believe. If you the greatest, baby, start going out there running the streets. If you the greatest, baby, start studying them books. If you the greatest, baby, start loving your spouse like you know you're supposed to love your spouse. If you the greatest, be there for those children, that son and that daughter. If you the greatest, do what it takes to be the greatest. Start acting on what it takes to be the greatest. And then greatness starts coming out of you because you have believed, you have said, you have acted. And yeah, baby, it's the good life. My name is Jimmie. We will see you next week. Holla.